Consumer Watch, Amazon has officially been ranked the most intimate brand of 2020. According to marketing agency MBLM, the e-commerce company took the #1 spot, beating out Disney and Apple. The agency has conducted this study annually for the last 10 years. It finds Amazon's dominance and breadth of portfolio have helped create emotional bonds with its customers. Associate Professor of Marketing at Mississippi State University, Mike Brazil, joins me now. Hi, Mike. So for those not familiar with these industry phrases, what exactly is brand intimacy, and why is it so important for companies?
Hi, Tanya. Brand intimacy is something that we get a lot of brand researchers care about because we like to know about the emotional connections that consumers feel with brands. And that is something that kind of transcends the typical loyalty that we look at. There's attitudinal loyalty and behavioral loyalty, and attitudinal is what makes people willing to spread positive word of mouth about a brand or kind of be a protector of the brand during a brand crisis or something like that.
So when we hear the word intimacy, I mean, I think a lot of us think of things that are sort of private. And when you think about the kinds of things you can buy on Amazon, you really can buy a wide range of things, including, very personal items. Does that have something to do with how a consumer might feel about a brand?
I think it does. One of my students actually pointed out last week that you can buy coffins on Amazon too, so that's pretty personal. Yeah, I think that does. To me, it's really interesting that an online retailer has ranked this high on the list, because really what you think of a lot of the times with these intimate brand relationships are companies that have experiences or experiential kind of retailers or experiential brands like auto manufacturers. I know they make up 40% of this list. Mm-hmm. To me, it's unusual that a company that customers don't really have any firsthand interactions with other than online, that they feel that kind of closeness. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that Amazon knows so much about us. When you have Prime and with their recommendations and things, they get to know you and they make recommendations just like a friend would. And so I think you feel a closeness with them just the same as you would with a friend who was really helpful.
And the study mentions this breadth of portfolio. So certainly you can buy almost anything you need on Amazon for sure. When it comes to an emotional following, how do you gauge, or how do companies gauge who has the biggest emotional following?
Sure, and that's something that we do care about because we know that people tend to really love brands and form relationships with brands that they feel like have personalities similar to their own. And so that emotional bond is important and profitable, as it turns out. The way that MBLM did it was that they conducted about 6,200 interviews with consumers and asked them a lot of questions, not just about the brands, but about their emotions toward those brands. At Mississippi State, we actually have a biometric business research lab, the largest in the Southeast. And we can actually get measures of people using things like brain waves and facial recognition to determine how engaged people are with brands, which is even kind of a more intensive way to study that emotional connection.
That's so interesting. And so none of that is turning consumers off then, because some people might say, whoa, that's a little bit too much intimacy for me.
True. And I think there probably are some people who feel that way. But at the same time, I think that people more and more are looking for brands that they can trust and they can relate to, just like the people in their lives. And so just like I think none of us would turn down the idea of having more friends, people don't really mind the idea of getting close to a retailer that they know they can trust, and that they know has everything they want and has their best interest at heart, hopefully.
So specifically, what is Amazon doing that sets it apart from other companies? I mean, you mentioned things like Amazon Prime, where it can follow your buying habits and suggest things that you might like. You mentioned the fact that you can buy anything from groceries to underwear. What else are they doing?
I think that's a lot of it, actually, Tanya. I think the fact that they tend to know us so well and show that to us is a big part of why people feel that intimate connection with them. They're certainly everywhere, and they don't always get the best press from their CEO on down to some of their policies. But people still seem to really respect the fact that they take in our information, they learn about us, and then they use that to make our lives better, which is a big measure of what MBLM is looking at with their brand intimacy intimacy measure.
But at the end of the day, nobody really cares unless it affects the bottom line, right? Or companies don't really care. So
That's
does
very true.
this brand intimacy translate into greater sales?
Absolutely. That's what's really fascinating to me is that over the past 10 years, while MBLM has been collecting this data, they've shown that there's a much higher profitability for the companies that are on this brand intimacy list. They have seen profit increases of about 7 times that of those companies on the Standard and Poor's list, and even 2.5 times greater than the average companies on the Fortune 500 list.
Wow.
So
Seems like consumers
companies are profitable.
they don't just want a shopping site, they want a friend.
Exactly, exactly. If you want more friends.
Mike Brazil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tanya.